When you think of Christmas movies, movies with elves and Santa and A Christmas Carol come to mind. But over the last 10 to 15 years, we've been getting a lot of movies about Krampus. But is there one that stands above all the rest? Welcome in, everybody, where I, your host, Rob, the Red-Nosed Reindeer, is going to lead you through this horror movie review with my co-host. First of all, Jingle Bells Jesse, what's going on?
What's up?
And Dave.
Hello.
You don't get a fun name.
Yeah, fuck you.
And that's how we're going to start it. We watched the movie Krampus from 2015. Luckily, we got there because as I was sending this movie out, Jesse actually found every other Krampus movie there was in the world before he found this one. There's a million Krampus movies that have come out in the last 10 years, in fairness. Whether it's a solo Krampus movie, there's a couple horror Christmas anthologies that have Krampus within those as well. I've seen Krampus vs. Santa. It's just Krampus. There's so many Krampus. But for this particular movie, Dave, can you hit us with our synopsis?
While the holiday season represents the most magical time of year, ancient European folklore warns of Krampus, a horned beast who punishes naughty children at Christmas time. When dysfunctional family squabbling causes young Max to lose his festive spirit, it unleashes the wrath of the fearsome demon. As Krampus lays siege to the Engel home, mom, pop, sister, and brother must band together to save one another from a monstrous fate. So, this movie answers the age-old question, what if National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation was also a horror movie?
We were all wondering, honestly.
Yeah. And the answer to that question is it would be fucking awesome because this movie kicked ass. I love this movie. I haven't seen many of the other Krampus movies. I've seen a few of them or a couple of them. But what I do know about all the other Krampus Christmas movies is if you combine all of their crowd ratings all together, it still doesn't equal 10.
And that's 100 movies. So
yeah, exactly. They're usually bad, but this one I thought was really well done. It was a good cast. We had Adam Scott, who's good. He's funny. And Toni Collette, who's I think super underrated. Obviously she gets recognition for her role in The Sixth Sense and more recently Hereditary, but I think she should have won an Oscar for her role in Hereditary. And she was good in this. So this was a well done movie. It was obviously, maybe not obviously comedy because it started out, I thought it was going to be more comedy than horror with that opening scene with what looked like it might be Black Friday. And then it kind of took on a more serious, but definitely campy feel to it. It was well written. It was definitely well acted for the most part. And it was a ton of fun. This movie was very fun.
It was a lot of fun. So this was kind of like almost the part 2 that we're all waiting for of Trick or Treat, where you had the same director and the same kind of feel where they tried to hit a lot of these Christmas traditions. And it definitely felt like a Lampoon movie where it was just a traditional Christmas movie, right? Could have been a Hallmark movie where you had the cousins came over and sorry, my dog's just going to tear apart my office and gallop on out of here. But you had all those kind of feelings. You had the stupid family members. You had the insufferable uncle. You had the fighting amongst the kids. You had all these sorts of things that other Christmas movies are also going to have. And then you got your nice Trick or Treat twist where it kind of twisted into more of a messed up movie. And this one, instead of being an anthology movie like Trick or Treat it followed one storyline, which was pretty cool. And I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I was like, damn, this movie is not good, but I'm enjoying the fuck out of it. And it was fun. I had a fun time watching it.
Yeah, I think the characters are important to hit on because it is the cross of all these movies that we've brought up, National Lampoons. It really feels like it's like Cousin Eddie coming over. But I think they did it perfectly where these characters are over the top, but they're not monumentally over the top, right? Where it's that whole, they're a little past what we would see from a real person for the most part, but not too far over that line, I would say. So they're still relatable to a degree, as opposed to like Cousin Eddie was just like so out there,
Yes.
right? Like he's just so out there. Where the uncle in this one, he's a little over the top, but not crazy over the top, I don't think. And I think the kids, like they were what they were, and you had the cousin problems and all the other stuff and all the Hallmark stuff that Jesse's bringing up. But I think that added to the movie because then you get the horror twist to it. And I have a few concerns. I have a few issues with the movie, but they're very minimal. Going to your point about the comedy thing, I thought they just try to middle it a little too much. They either try to go comedy in certain elements where I'm like, maybe they should have leaned horror a little more here. Sound effects were like my biggest problem with this movie were like comedy sound effects, like just over the top, like slip noises and
Mm.
stuff like that, and crash and bang noises, where it's like, it doesn't need that. We're not doing that. Like you're telling a good enough story. I thought some of the sound effects were like the most egregious part of this entire movie for me personally. I don't know if you guys picked up on that, but there was like a slip and fall sound, like in the middle of one of the big battles. And it was just like, I could have done without some of that.
Yeah, I actually didn't pick up on the sound effect thing, but now that you mention it, I do kind of know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
But first of all, the issue that I had with this movie, and this is one of my only issues, is there didn't seem like enough urgency when the kids were getting
Yeah.
taken.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel. I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't feel real at all. Like they ran back to the house, and now they're like trying to start the fire while the daughter's missing in a blizzard, and they heard her screaming
Mhm.
and then ran home. It's like, I don't see it. They're like, well, we got to just wait till the storm's over, then we'll go find her. It's like, there's not that nobody would act like that. Absolutely nobody. It made no sense. That was my major concern with the movie. I did mostly like this movie. I like this movie a lot,
Mhm.
and I thought it was fun. And it did kind of seem like they weren't sure if they wanted to be horror comedy or not. But then you get the gingerbread men. You're like, all right, I guess this is horror comedy.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
gingerbread men were some of the only CGI that they really used in this movie. For the most part, the majority of this movie was practical effects, and I like that in a movie. And a lot of the costumes were cool. It was just fun. It was a fun ride. It's not a scary movie per se. It would probably be scary if you tried to show this movie to your kids, depending on
Yes.
how young your kids are. So
Yeah.
while it has that Christmas message of, don't become that non-believer and don't break your Christmas traditions. It was all about keeping your Christmas traditions. And it was weird because you had the cousins and you had the bad guys in this movie that they weren't believers. And that was kind of where you thought Christmas was going to show up because the cousins were being mean and they were bullying and they weren't believers and they were making fun of Max in the movie for still believing in Santa Claus and all this kind of stuff. But really, the moment that Krampus was summoned to this house was because Max ripped up his Christmas note to Santa and he wished it all away. And that was the bringing on of Krampus. So it was all on Max. It was Max's fault. And it was up to Max to break this curse to save his family. And the movie was all about sacrifice. So if you notice each death in this movie, the person was sacrificed or giving themselves up. And that was what it all was based around. And once you get towards the end of the movie, Max had to make the decision to sacrifice himself to try to save his family. So it was sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. You notice it with a lot of the deaths where they give
towards
themselves
the
up
end.
and they get sucked into the ground. And that was the whole idea around it. And in the end, you got a nice horror movie ending, which we'll get into in a little bit, but it all revolved around that storyline.
Yeah, I want to go back to you bringing up some of the costume designs on this movie, and I thought they really hit a home run with most of them.
Mhm.
I thought some of these were terrifying, and I actually thought of it from the perspective of watching this if I was 7 or 8 or 9 years old. And although it didn't scare me as an adult, I can tell you right now that that Jack in the Box and that angel specifically,
Mhm.
those 2 things would have given me nightmares as a child.
Oh, the Jack
Those
in the Box was
things,
great.
the Jack in the Box was so good. So, so good.
And the introduction to him made sense as well. So you get the UPS delivery. It wasn't UPS. I think it was
Oh
DHL.
yeah.
DHL. They had referenced UPS though, because they're like, those ones didn't come from me, and it was a big Santa bag. And in
Yeah.
the Santa bag held all of these demented evil toys, and they had accepted it into the house. And you got to kind of feel that that's kind of what the ground rules are. Is if you bring it into the house, then all of a sudden they're going to wreak terror on you.
Yeah. So the character designs were all pretty well done. The gingerbread men, yes, comedy, but they were fun.
Yeah.
The only miss of all the character designs for me was the elves that came in. When the elves came in, I'm like, these character designs, they look like they put paper mache on like some people, and that was it. Did not care for the elves too much.
I
And
thought they were kind of cool, but I wouldn't look at them and be like, oh, those are elves. They didn't have any elf kind of feature. They looked more like trolls, maybe, or just yeah. I wasn't crazy about the elves. I thought Krampus was terrifying in this. I would have liked a little bit more facial movement out of him though, because it did just look like a big dumb mask. But the mask was scary as fuck.
yeah, I would have liked more Krampus. I know we usually say we don't want more monster, but we're doing a movie about Krampus, and I felt like he just wasn't really in it enough.
I disagree. I think it was the perfect amount because you
Yeah.
had that kind of intro death scene with the sister where you have Krampus hopping from roof to roof,
hmm
and then you have all of his minions kind of doing his work for him, and then you get your big reveal towards the end. And the other thing that I loved was Omi, the grandmother who seemed like she knew everything. Obviously, she had a backstory with this whole thing. I loved the cut scene where it
Awesome.
went back and told her story with the
Mhm.
animated scene there. It was so cool. I'm like, I would have watched the entire movie if it was this. I mean,
Yeah.
I did watch the entire movie, but I would have loved a movie with that kind of animation. It was just so cool. And it was an exposition dump that didn't feel like an exposition dump. It was fine. It was just telling the backstory. So you get these in a lot of these movies, especially bad horror movies, where they give you an exposition dump and you're like, thanks, I didn't need that. And
Yeah.
also, this is stupid.
This
Yeah,
one,
no,
yeah.
this was great. This
Yeah.
this was really, really well done. You wanted to hear it, to your point, Jesse. Like you wanted the story, whereas you just usually like, why? Of course, no one talks like this. But it was organic to the story. It was perfect for her to tell the story at that point in time. That animation was awesome. The character was really well done too. The grandmother,
This
right?
movie this movie was an absolute blast. There wasn't a single part of this movie where I was like, didn't really need this, or this is kind of boring, or didn't really drag anywhere. It
Mhm.
just kept the pace the whole time. It was 97 minutes long, I think, which was perfect.
Yeah, absolutely
Absolutely
perfect. The movies that I can go back right now, because I just had to watch other movies for another show. I had to watch The Fat Man with Mel Gibson, right?
Yep.
So it's this movie about him being Santa Claus, and he's getting hunted down by an assassin. And that movie sounds fun, right? Like it sounds
Mm.
like we can have some fun with this movie. There was no fun in that movie. That movie just they did not lean into the fun aspect of it. It was this dark comedy that just missed on every single level. And it was weird because Mel Gibson actually made a pretty good Santa in that movie, but it was like subplots that made no sense. And then I watched Violent Night with David Harbour,
Yep.
Valiant Night
and
was awesome.
and it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. Like I was like, this is what that other movie should have been. And I think that's kind of the Krampus problem. I bring that up because I think a Krampus movie should be somewhat fun. Like you should have fun watching it because you're already watching like this ridiculous premise.
Mhm.
So if you're going to do a ridiculous premise, have fun with it. Like, and I think that they fully lean into the fun here. I think that they straddle the line pretty well. I wish they went a little more horror on a few different parts, but like I said, it's so nitpicky that I'm not even knocking the movie for that. The only thing I'm knocking it for in that respect is some of the sound effects I just thought were a little too over the top. If you go back and watch the big battle scene, I promise you'll know what I'm talking about. Characters, I thought the characters were good. I thought we got arcs from a lot of the characters
Mhm.
on here, whether they were obnoxious or not. I thought some of them felt secondary. The sister that came for the thing, I thought she showed a lot of strength in this movie, where you expected her to just be mostly a background character for a lot of it. she was actually pretty badass at one point where she
Which
was
one? There were two sisters that.
not Toni Collette's sister,
Oh,
the
yeah,
aunt.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you thought that she would just kind of be there to be there, but she actually was pretty badass at one point. So I think my point being, almost every character in this movie got their time to shine for the most part. So I think they did a great job with the cast in that respect.
Absolutely. And casting Conchetta Ferrell as Aunt Dorothy was perfect. She was
Yes.
so good in this.
Oh, she was
Yeah.
great. She goes to teach the kids something, and she just teaches them how to make some sort of a, what was it,
Peppermint schnapps. Yeah.
Fantastic. Loved
Yeah.
her character in this. But
Yeah,
Omi was probably the strongest character in this, the grandmother. She was so well written. And then that final scene where you're like, you don't have to die here. That's where it started to make sense to me. I'm like, oh, she knows that she needs to actually sacrifice. And so does everyone else. And another thing I thought they did really well in this movie was creating that scene of they're isolated inside this house. And you start to realize that they're already screwed. They're already in the snow globe, right?
Mhm.
Which is kind of what happens in the ending. You get your twisted ending where you think everything's okay for a minute, then you realize, wait a second, now they're just in this loop and it's not going to be okay. But you had her death was kind of the turning point where I started to realize what was actually going on here with the deaths in the movie. And she was just such a strong character. She didn't have to do much, but she was just that ominous old creepy grandma who knew some stuff.
Yeah. So it's a movie we all like. I think for me, we're gonna get into scores, but it's one that I will revisit. This was my second time watching it. I'll revisit it again in the future. I don't know if it'll make my list as like a every year movie, but maybe every two. Is there anything else you guys wanted to hit on in this movie in particular?
I wanted to mention that it didn't need to be rated R. It had a PG-13 rating. I personally would have liked an R rating on it and a little bit more blood and guts. I think that would have been fun. But I understand why they didn't do it, and I don't think it hurt the movie. It's just me being
Right. Well, it is tricky when the kids are the victims, and obviously we reviewed some movies recently where they had no problem making kids the victims, but this one, it's a Christmas movie, and I get why they shot for that. I mean, for this to be the only letdown for me is for this to be basically Trick or Treat 2, or until we actually get Trick or Treat 2, for this to be the second installment from this director that a lot of people are waiting a long time for. It wasn't fantastic. Trick or Treat was fantastic. This was good and a lot of fun, but it's not a perfect movie. And
okay, well, the difference is Trick or Treat had the gore.
Yeah.
True. Trick or Treat was a better movie. I mean, we could bring up 1,000 points on why it's better, but it could have used that R rating and gotten the gore.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of with Dave on the PG-13 thing, because maybe I wouldn't let a 7 or 8-year-old watch this, but I think that this would honestly be a fun horror movie to introduce, a 12 or 13-year-old to, and like get into horror with this movie, because I don't think it's overly gory and a tough watch. Obviously it's not Saw, but I do think it's still a movie that if you showed a 12 or 13-year-old, they'd probably be a little scared by this, right? Like if it's one of their first horror movies. So I think it's a great introductory horror movie while still being scary.
I'm with you, Rob. I think show this to your kids, no matter how young they are, get them to behave around Christmas.
Yeah. And then what you do is you get them a present with one of the Krampus balls.
Yeah.
So they get scared to death on Christmas morning. Or you let them, oh no, here's what you do. You let them open that present. Like, oh, I don't know who that one's from. It just has your name on it, Johnny. And then it's got the weird wrapping paper.
No.
You let them open it up on the Christmas Eve and then go to bed.
You go all out. Christmas Eve, kids go to bed. You board up all the windows and doors in your house. And then you all leave. That's it.
But you leave signs of a struggle.
Yeah.
Just
smash a few
Something
windows.
like that. Yeah. We're just tossing around some ideas. We're just brainstorming.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. Do we want to get into some scores for this movie?
We do.
I can start. I'm pretty confident with my score. I like where I'm going to put this. I really like this movie. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, it'll probably make most Christmases for me for a movie that I watch in the Christmas season. Few things here or there that I didn't like. I'm going to give it a 4.3. And I think that's pretty fair for this particular movie. Dave, what do you got of that?
I had it at a 4.1. I thought this was such a fun movie. I feel like it could have been scarier. And personally, like I said, I wanted the R rating on it, but I don't think it hurt it at all. No points off. But this is how you end a fucking horror movie.
Yes.
This is like best case scenario ending. They hit all of the points that I would want to hit, right? So you got the climax, like the big crazy fight scene at the end, and then you think it's kind of going to go one direction, and then it doesn't really go the direction you really think it's going to go, and then you think you get a happy ending, right? It looks like, oh, it's a happy ending, thank God. There's your relief, and then they twist it, and this was such a fucking good twist at the end, like such a good, like, oh, as you think it's a happy ending, no, it's not. They're in a snow globe in Krampus's basement, and I was like, this is so good. What a perfect horror movie ending. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, I got this one at a 4.2, so I'm right between you guys.
Nice.
Same exact. I was gonna go 4.3, but I was like, I really got to make sure that Dave has to make a new graphic for each one of us. So I'm gonna go 4.2 on this one. I enjoyed it when I first started watching. I'm like, God damn it! If Rob gives me one more shitty Christmas movie to watch, and then quickly it turned into, because it started with the Black Friday thing. I'm like, I feel like every Christmas movie starts with this, but then it was fine because I realized they're doing a lot of the things that all of the other Christmas movies do just to rope you in, and then it took a big turn, and I just had a lot of fun. I love the cast in this. I mean, to see Adam Scott as not like the bad guy comic, in a comedy like he was in Step Brothers and a few other movies as well, and then the guy who played Howard, he's hilarious in everything he does, Anchorman, all those kinds of movies. And like Dave said, Toni Collette is actually I haven't seen anything that she's in that I didn't think she absolutely crushed it. So like Dave said, underrated actress, but yeah, I liked it. It was fun. 4.2.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I'm excited that you don't want another bad Christmas movie, because we're watching Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 for next week.
So I did watch Silent Night, Deadly Night, the first one in preparation. Right, but I was like, I don't want to just jump into the second movie, good or bad. I want to know what the story is. So I did.
Well, you're going to be mad that you watched the first movie.
I guess I'll watch the second movie and reassess my decision here, but I don't see how it could have hurt the second movie.
It'll help the review when we compare the two movies.
Maybe.
Okay.
All right.
Rob, weird, so I'll close it out. So actually, Dave, you close it out. My mic sucks. Rob's internet sucks. Dave, you close out the show.
So that's going to do it for our review of the 2015 version of Krampus. If you liked that review, just wait for the next one that we got coming and the one after that, as we just kind of gave a little teaser of all Christmas season. We're going to be reviewing Christmas horror movies, and we're going to just keep it going. So thanks for coming out.
Hey everybody, Rob from Hometown Ghost Stories here. Wanted to thank you for checking out this piece of side content. If you really liked it, you can head over to Patreon, and for as little as $3 a month, you can get access to these a little bit early. Also, we are doing member-only stuff on Patreon, such as our History of Ghost series, where we talk about like Andrios, Banshees. We let you know where they came from, their origin, some stories associated with them. It's a lot of fun. Until then, if you look over this shoulder here, you can find one of our earlier episodes. And if you look down here, we got another side content episode. Until next time, from Jesse, myself, and I guess even Dave, thanks for watching Hometown Ghost Stories.